Welcome to Aloha's May webinar. Thank you for joining us. This is one in a series of monthly webinars that we do on different topics. There will be time for questions at the end, and just a momentary housekeeping note. If you have questions throughout, if you will type them, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of your, or the top of your Zoom screen, wherever the controls are. If you will type your questions in there, it will be easier for us to answer that instead of putting it in the chat box, if you'll just put it in the Q&A box. And we will have time for questions and answer all of them at the end. So as you have the questions, go ahead and type them in there as we go through, and we'll address them all at the end. So today, we're pleased to have Carolyn Ross, who also happens to be the president of Aloha's Board of Directors, joining us today. And Carolyn is also the executive director of Care Connections Network in California. And she's here today with that hat on instead of her Aloha hat. And she's going to describe how her congregation uses this model to provide senior ministry for not only their own membership, but also the community around them. So without taking any more time, Carolyn, please proceed. And
great, thank you. Thank you, Carol. Okay, yeah, thank you all for joining us today. I'm really excited to share a little bit more about what we've been doing. I'm going to go ahead and just start off by sharing my screen. So give me just a moment to get that started. Okay, so I'm going to talk about social ministry for older adults and how our congregation used a community-based model and adapted it to work with our congregation and also to work with our community. So I am Carolyn Ross, as Carol said, and I am blessed to be the board president of Aloha. And I am also the executive director of Care Connections Network. I'm also a former member of a leadership team for an organization called Village Movement California, and I'm going to tell you more about that a little later. But what kind of all that means is I am very much interested in the aging experience that we all have and in empowering older adults to do that in the best way that they can. A little more personally, I do serve in my congregation. I organize our women's ministry, which means I lead Bible studies and plan women's retreats. I'm also in my 4th and final year as our church council president. I'm terming out. I won't be too happy about that, just kidding. Personally, I do live in Huntington Beach, California with my husband and 2 sons. One was away at college, but now things have changed and he is back home doing online school. I also have a niece living with me, which has been a blessing to have a girl for a little while, and she's 26 years old. She works for the Anaheim Ducks hockey team. So everyone is pretty much working from home right now, which is a little challenging. And just to share why I am passionate about this work, it comes from my personal experience. I cared for my aging mother when she was kind of dealing with illness and until she ultimately passed. And at that time, I had 2 very young children. It was a very challenging time for me. I struggled with the fact that we were engaging in this role reversal. I didn't realize how normal that is. And I dealt with, feelings of guilt and just being confused about that. I also, neither one of us, neither she nor I, realized how many amazing services were available to us in our community. And as a result, it was a very isolating experience. And I've just made it my goal to help other people have a different experience and to help them be able to access those resources and that support that we do have in our congregation and in our community. At that time, I didn't even really reach out to my congregation. It was just challenging. So I really want to help other people have a different experience. Okay, so the reality of getting older is that there are definite challenges. A lot of the things that happen to us as we age are not appealing. We don't want to do them. We don't want it to be that way, but it is. But also with aging come amazing opportunities. Opportunity to reinvent yourselves in many ways, the wisdom that comes with it. So what we're doing at Care Connections Network and in this model is celebrating that, is celebrating uh, those opportunities that we have as we get older and being able to be self-determinate. So a lot of us do have aging congregations. I have a graph here showing that approximately 30% of Lutherans are over the age of 65. And so addressing the needs of this population really is important, not only within our congregation, but also in our communities. And I'll talk more about demographics in a little bit. But I think we all know that aging is a universal human experience, and it's one that if we're lucky, we're all going to get to go through. And I'd like you to personalize this a little bit right now and just think about what it's going to look like for you. So right now, I imagine that you're busy. You probably have careers you're engaging in, you have close relationships, you serve in your congregations or in your communities. But look forward just down the road. Maybe that's 5 years for you, maybe it's 30 years for you. There's no way to really know that. But what might that look like? And what happens when you get older and you're unable to do all those things that you do today? Maybe some relationships change in ways that you don't experience or imagine. You have health challenges. So many older adults find themselves isolated and alone at this time, and daily tasks become challenging. But if we ask older people what they want to stay in their homes. They want to stay in those communities that they've lived in all their lives, that they've raised their children in and become a part of. So our congregation grappled with these issues, and our congregation is Lutheran Church of the Resurrection in Huntington Beach, California. And I'm going to call it LCR because it seems like every name I have to say today is exceedingly long. So I'm going to refer to Care Connections Network as CCN and Lutheran Church of the Resurrection as LCR. So it was back in 2010 that our co-founders, Fumi Liang and Diana Meinhold, each identified a need for services to older adults, not only in the congregation, but in the community. And what happened was Fumi Liang is our cultural ministry coordinator. We're blessed to have a Japanese ministry. We have Japanese language services, Bible studies, different activities, things like that. She coordinated that. And the population that really attends these services is mostly older Japanese women, a lot of whom are widows. And so they were calling Fumi for all sorts of things. They needed rides to doctors, they needed help around the house, things like that. And she was starting to become overwhelmed with their requests. At that same time, Diana Meinhold was also a congregation member, and she is a licensed fiduciary working in the community, helping older adults. And one Sunday she was sitting in church and she looked around and she realized that the people around her looked a lot like the people she was helping out in the community. And she assumed that they probably had some pretty similar needs that were most likely not being met. So they each separately, but at the same time, approached our senior pastor at the time. Definitely a God thing. He connected them. They had never met, even though they attend the same church, different services. And he was a great delegator. He tasked them with coming up with a way to deal with this, a model to deal with this. So they started looking around, and actually Fumi attended the Village to Village gathering in 2011, and that gave them a working model. So Fumi is actually our board chair now. She tells a funny story about this period when they were trying to get some guidance, and she started calling the ELCA. She thought, well, surely, they have a department there that can help us. And so she called and she asked for the senior ministry department, and they connected her to the youth, thinking that she meant senior high school. So even though this should be so obvious to us, and even though our congregations are serving our older adults, being intentional about it is something that I think has maybe been lacking a little bit. So after developing their model, they came up with a working board of members of the congregation who had different backgrounds that could help develop the organization. They brought me on in March of 2012, And we started accepting our members and doing our operations in June of 2012. We are an independent, tax-exempt 501c3 organization. We got that status in 2015. We currently average 70 members. We are a membership organization, but we serve, I would say, at least another 70 more. You do not have to be a CCN member to participate in our activities. So I've kind of talked about the village. I've thrown around Village Movement California, Village Network, and we've talked about how most people really do want to remain in their own homes and communities. So how do we honor that wish? Well, for us, we believe that the village is the answer. And what is a village? A village is a grassroots membership organization that connects older adults to the community programming and expertise they need to continue living life on their own terms in the places that they want to call home. So villages are intentional communities. They're led by the older adults who are part of them. They share their skills and support with each other to navigate those challenges and opportunities of aging that I talked about. And we really do believe that a better experience of aging is possible when we work together in this way. Our members provide support to each other. I'll talk about that more also as we move on. And we just recognize that we all navigate transitions as we're going through this aging journey, but we're more likely to stay in charge of our lives and feel empowered in that journey when we're part of a supportive community. So why do we need things like this? Well, I think nowadays everyone has heard a lot of the statistics, but we truly are living in a moment of historic change. And this demographic change that we're going through is profound. As a society, I think we're probably ill-prepared to cope with it. Our government, the wheels of our government, I think we all recognize, tend to move slowly, so that relying on them to be able to deal with this on their own is probably not realistic. We are living longer. Fewer people have pensions. Most people are underinvested in retirement plans. It's really changing our society. So just some statistics, like it or not, we're all getting older. From the year 2000 to the year 2020, population of Americans aged 55 to 64 will have grown 73%. And by 2030, 30 million of us, that's 1 out of every 5 people, will be at least 65 years old. And they call that the silver tsunami. I try not to use that word anymore. It's kind of negative. And according to the AARP, 10,000 baby boomers turn 65 every day. That's 7 people a minute. And also by the year 2030, we will have, for the first time, more people aged 65 and older than we have children under the age of 18. So as we age, the reality is that we're more likely to experience social isolation and loneliness. And I'm also going to talk about that a little more in more detail. But at this age, we're also asking ourselves, what is my purpose? How can I still contribute? I still have things I want to do in ways that I can contribute. And how do I want to be known at this stage of my life? And how do I want to see myself? So the village model really does offer members support, as well as that opportunity to age with self-determination and to be able to answer those questions for themselves. It also allows them to remain active and integrated in their homes and communities. So the village movement started with Beacon Hill Village in Boston about 20 years ago. And it was a group of aging neighbors who had raised their children in their homes, all lived together in this community for a long time, but they were starting to struggle with things like the stairs, high ceilings, just the daily tasks sometimes of living. And they didn't want to move. So they got together and said, hey, we can do something about this. And they actually came up with this model. In 2010, the Village to Village Network was formed, and that's a nationwide organization that collaborates to maximize growth of individual villages. And they really do a good job of getting villages up and running, starting. If any of you ever wanted to start a village, that would be one of the first places. Well, of course, you could call me first, and then I would probably send you to the Village to Village Network, because they do have such great resources. There are actually about 300 villages nationwide. But In saying that, I suspect that a lot of people haven't heard of them. So that is why I served on the Village Movement California leadership team developing that organization. We really are striving, at least in California, where we have about 42 operating villages, to just increase that visibility so that when you're thinking of retirement or as you're getting older, if you said to someone, I think I'm thinking about joining a village, they would know what you were talking about, and you'd be able to have a conversation about the best village to join and to serve your needs. Many areas of our country have these regional groups like Village Movement California. That's something that's really developing and growing. And it just helps us scale this movement in a more effective way. Care Connections Network is a member of both of these organizations. Okay, so now let's talk about the why of all this. Why does it matter? I also think within congregations, sometimes we think, well, our members aren't lonely, our members aren't isolated, but they very well may be. and I've learned that along the way too, when I've seen people that I had never even seen at church really blossom once they've joined our organization. But I'll tell some stories in a little bit. So I talked before about the fact that a lot of older adults find themselves isolated and lonely. They're not the same thing, but they really do have the same results. Researchers have actually found that loneliness is more dangerous than obesity, and it has similar health effects or impacts as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And 43% of older adults do report feeling lonely on a regular basis. Now, social isolation is a lack of social connections or contact with society. So you can count it. I had X number of interactions today. But loneliness is that more subjective feeling of being alone and feeling distressed over not having enough social relationships or positive contact with people. So you can actually live in a household full of other people. Maybe it's an older adult living with their children, their child and their children. It could be a really busy household, or they could be married and still have a spouse, but they're not getting those quality interactions that they need. So these are some of the negative health impacts that result from social isolation and loneliness. The National Health Institute for Healthcare Management is actually a nonprofit research arm of the health insurance industry. They report that social isolation among older adults is costing our federal government $6.7 billion annually. Poor social relationships are associated with a 29% increase in the risk of coronary heart disease and a 32% risk of stroke. Other things such as sleep problems, depression, anxiety, substance abuse, diabetes, all of those things are impacted by this. And they also have, socially isolated and lonely people also have a higher risk of these things: long-term care, ER visits. Fraud is a big thing, especially for isolated older adults. We actually, at Care Connections Network, we did a pilot project for actually a tablet, a device called GrandPad. They needed some older adults to try it out, so they called us, and we did that for them. And the whole purpose of it, you can make phone calls on it, emails, play games, all the things you would do on an iPad or something like that. But the caveat is no one can contact you on it that you have not added to your approved list. So it basically exists to prevent fraud for older adults over the phone or email. It also, being isolated and lonely actually increases your risk of dementia by about 40%. And lonely people are about 40% more likely to die prematurely than those with healthy social relationships. So it really is an important thing to address. So why are so many of us living alone? Well, it's kind of our modern life. and you can read the slide, but higher divorce rates, people aren't marrying or having fewer children. Families don't stay in the same area. I know, for me, my children will most likely not live in Southern California near me, just from economic factors. So, you don't have that immediate family support that we had. A lot of people experience loss of a loved one, issues with their income. Driving is a big one. If you can't drive and you can't go out and do the things you used to do, you find yourself, slowly becoming more and more isolated. And a lot of the things that we have developed to address this, for example, Instacart, where someone does your grocery shopping for you. Well, right now that's a lifesaver for older adults given the COVID situation. But for people that use that on a regular basis, maybe before that, their interaction was going to the grocery store, and now they've taken that away. So even our modern technology solutions often are making us more isolated. So obviously, I'm a big supporter of the village model, and I think that that can be an antidote to a lot of this, to social isolation and loneliness. And villages really do seek to create intentional community. And our members feel supported by each other, by a community of their peers that they can rely on. And this model preserves the individual's ability to feel that they're empowered in this journey of aging. We all have to go through it, but I think that the goal is to do it feeling like we're still steering the ship. So at Care Connections Network, we're dedicated to helping older adults age in their own homes and communities as they continue their lives of purpose and promise. We really do want to revolutionize not only how we're thinking about aging in our country, but how we're experiencing it. We're proud to have been one of the first faith-based villages. We are an independent 501c3 organization, and we serve as a social ministry of Lutheran Church of the Resurrection. We truly believe our tagline of aging better. I also want to mention that Aloha has launched a project in Florida based on this village model, and that's the Live Up organization. They work with 7 congregations to serve the older adults in a small geographic area in Florida. So I'm excited that there's more Lutherans out there doing this, and I'm always excited to help congregations look at doing this and figure out the best way that it could serve them and their needs. So for our program, we accomplish that mission I just shared with you in these ways. We have educational opportunities. These are monthly seminars with a free lunch, and our members meet together in community first. They have lunch, they socialize, and this is really important just for all the reasons I just shared with social isolation. We have a lot of community partners, and they supply speakers for our presentations. We focus on health and lifestyle issues for older adults, and it's just designed to give them the knowledge that they need to navigate those changes that come with aging, whether it's lifestyle, health, whatever it is. We talk about everything. We do a lot on brain health. We do a lot of exercise things, nutrition, fraud. We've had a district attorney come out and talk to us about older adult fraud and things like that. And basically, we're very open to whatever our members want to learn about. We will find someone to come in and talk about it. Social opportunities. We do have weekly opportunities. We have chair yoga and mahjong groups, things like that. We do monthly opportunities, sometimes more than once a month. Actually, that's really, really growing. So prior to COVID, we were doing a lot of those things. These are things like going to museums or other places that people would maybe not travel to alone. We rent buses, we do things like that if it's a significant distance, or we arrange carpools. But again, it's designed to bring our members together in community and forge those deeper relationships with each other to keep them from being isolated and alone and feeling like they can count on each other and that they're connected to each other. And I can say that we also do quarterly special events, like quarterly parties with catered meals and things like that. And the first one we had, everybody came, they had a great time, they left like very quickly. Now I'm like politely trying to get people to leave so I can, get started on cleanup, because they have really they enjoy each other. And I hear them having conversations about helping each other. I'm going to talk about volunteers in a minute, but The volunteer portion of our services is not used very often. And the main reason it's not used very often is they are helping each other. And that has been our desire, is to form that intentional community of people who can help each other. We also have preferred service providers. These are companies that we've vetted. We've checked their licensing and insurance. We've actually interviewed them. For home care, I think we had about 20 companies come in. We selected 3. So we're very particular about who we're referring our members to. We negotiated discounts with them. And honestly, home care is the one that is requested the most. And we really do feel confident because we were so particular about who we're referring to. We also seek out feedback from our members to make sure that what's going on is what they want. So we do have the volunteer program. If someone needs a ride to the doctor or something like that, they can call us. Or, honestly, the biggest one I get is help with their phone, and I just help them with that. But things like that, just, that you can call and someone's going to help you, and that because it's a community, you don't have to feel bad about asking for that help. And basically we connect the dots. I said at the beginning that I didn't realize how many amazing resources there were in our communities. And I think a lot of people don't know that. So we've made it our job to know that. And when people call the office and they need something, we're not the service provider, but we absolutely know who is and who can help them and who's going to help them in the best way. So we're just providing that service for them. So just kind of an example of how all this works in practice. One of our members this summer went to Norway to visit family. She fell and broke her hip there and had to go into the hospital. And the day that she was going to be coming back home, the next day, her son was going on a prepaid, 4-day vacation to Mexico. And he really didn't want to have to cancel his trip. So he called us and we, set it up for him. He was there to bring her home. And then we had a volunteer coming in, calling her first, seeing what she needed, coming in every day, chatting for a while with her, bringing her a meal, picking up her prescriptions, just doing all those things for her. And both of them were just so grateful. And the member said that she felt so comfortable with it because these are her friends. These are her friends that she sees at all these events and who she's built these relationships with. So she was never felt uncomfortable with it. Now, during this time, during COVID, we've had to adapt. We're doing a lot like this on Zoom. We're doing things like Zoom happy hours. We're moving our educational seminars to Zoom. We have weekly conversation and coffee Zoom events with topics that people know in advance that they come prepared to discuss. And we're just really trying to figure out how we can navigate this and continue to offer our members what they want and what they need. What you're not seeing on here is the spiritual resources. And we, as a separate community organization from the congregation, we do not proselytize. We don't offer Bible studies or things like that. They are very much available at the church. And it's very obvious that we're a Christian organization. But our members do know, and we make it aware that any of those spiritual needs that they have, they can absolutely, call the church for. Our senior pastor is very involved and participates in a lot of our activities. He actually, in February, he led a tour bus group to LA to go see all the hidden sites and things like that. So he's very entertaining. They enjoyed that. So what I think our membership is about 80 to 85% congregation members. The other is community members. And that's the population I really want to grow and where I see the most potential for growth. So we just want them to feel comfortable coming here. We've also had 3 or 4 of those community members join the congregation because they really recognize that where our hearts are and that, this is a group of people that they really want to get to know better, know more about, and really be a part of, not only in these ways that I'm talking about, but in those spiritual ways. So this is, our community partnerships are vital to making all of this happen. Those seminars and things that we have, we call it the Aging Together Conference, like an active aging event. All of these things that go on happened because of our partnerships with these community organizations. It helps them fulfill their mission of serving in the community, and it helps us fulfill our mission of helping our participants feel empowered in their aging experience. We are, as I said, a social ministry organization of Lutheran Church of the Resurrection. We're affiliated with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. We're also affiliated with Lutheran Services in America. And the affiliations definitely give us a little more legitimacy out in the community. So that is the Village to Village Network and Village Movement California. For the hospital in our community, we actually partnered or got, into our relationship with them through the Faith Nursing Program. If you are a member of a congregation, you're not participating in something like that, it is a really good resource. So I'm just going to tell you a little story. All the photos I'm showing you are of our members, except for this one, because I'm going to tell a personal story. She doesn't mind me sharing it, but I don't want to put her picture up there. I'm going to call her Anne, which is not really her name, but anyway, so when I first met Anne, I think she was in her early 70s. She'd been happily married to the same man for most of her life. She had a son, but he didn't live near her. But she and her husband were healthy, and she just thought, well, we're going to support each other and live in our home for a lot of years. But then one day, Anne's husband came home and told her at that age that he no longer wanted to be married to her. And she was pretty devastated. She hadn't seen this coming, and she was, alone now at a time in her life that she never thought she would be. And it was the time in her life when she really felt like she needed some help. At that time, CCN had just started. And so she decided she was going to join. And she told me when she joined that we were her insurance policy, that she really didn't need any of the things that we were offering, but she was going to join just in case. And at the beginning, that's pretty much what she did. I think she got a referral to a handyman. She, got a ride to a doctor's appointment. But what she recognized was happening was she wasn't socializing in the ways that she did when she was part of a couple. And she was really starting to get lonely. So she decided to come to one of the events, and she felt more comfortable to keep coming to events. And what ended up happening is that she really deepened those friendships. Even though she'd been part of the community or the congregation for so long, she really hadn't formed more than sort of surface friendships. And doing all of these things with her peers in CCN really helped her to take those relationships to a different and deeper level. She's one of our biggest supporters now. I know her story so well because she writes us the sweetest letters all the time. Everything that we do, she, is just telling us how wonderful it was. And she's done videos for us. She's just a great ambassador for us. But she really did come to realize that this was more than just an insurance policy, that this was an opportunity for reciprocal support. And that's really a key component of our model. There's a lot of organizations that give you things, that you can go to for services. But a lot of older adults don't want to do that. They don't want to feel that they are somehow in need. So when you have a reciprocal community where you are helping someone, and then in return down the road, they will help you, it is a much more empowering experience. So God's work, our hands, I know this is an ELCA slogan, but as Lutherans, we really do have a great history of social ministry. And by nature, our congregations do act as informal villages. But what this model does is take that work that's going on and intentionalizes it and organizes it, puts some stronger framework around it. It also empowers the members, as I said, to view this as a reciprocal thing. I think in the past, a lot of our members would not have called the church office and said that they needed a meal. But they don't mind because CCN is their thing. It's like their club, it's their organization, and they've helped other people. They now don't mind calling me and saying, hey, I'm coming out of the hospital, I'd like a few meals. So it just kind of changes the frame that they're seeing that through. Okay, so our basic structure, We have a working board of directors. That's my current board of directors right there. We have one part-time paid contractor, that's me, that organizes everything and serves as the director. Our income comes from membership dues, that's about 30%. Congregational support is about 30%. And then grant funding and private donations make up about the other third. And villages can be structured in a lot of ways. There's a saying that if you've seen one village, you've seen one village, because there's lots of different ways to do it. And it should meet the needs of your population that you're trying to serve and your resources, what resources you have. You could use church staff and all volunteers. You can do what we've done with heavy volunteers and a little bit of staffing. Some villages that have more income are heavier on the paid staff. Some villages we do have membership dues. They're very low for a village. And we have scholarships available to anyone who asks. We don't ask for proof, of need or anything like that. Some villages are completely free. And some villages are expensive. So it just depends on what you're offering and what your need is. So this is a reciprocal relationship. LCR provides us that monthly financial support that I talked about. They give us office space. I'm sitting in the church library right now. My office is just down the hallway. We don't have to pay for utilities. We have meeting space, access obviously to this library, to the church hall. Event space is huge. The fact that they provide that to us and we don't have to pay for it makes all of this possible. Also, we have access to the congregation, not only for our membership, which, as I said, is about 80–85% congregation members, but also for volunteers. If I need, especially right now, during this time of COVID, we're grocery shopping for our members. We're picking up their prescriptions. We're doing all those things for us. I can't send out, the majority of my volunteers are also members. So they're 65 plus for the most part. But my younger volunteers are church members for the most part, and they're going out and doing these things for my members. They're shopping and actually making well-being phone calls to them every week, all those sorts of things. So that access to volunteers is huge. In return, CCN provides a social ministry to the congregation. We are caring for the older adults. They're very practical and immediate needs in a way that was not being done before. And we also are able to act as an outreach to the larger community for service opportunities to really help the congregation serve in the way that they want to. We have a congregation, in our last survey, one of the top focus was, how can we serve in the community more? How can we be engaged in the community more? And Care Connections Network offers a way for them to do that. Especially right now, again, during COVID, we're actually, Care Connections Network, Lutheran Church of the Resurrection, is partnering with the city of Huntington Beach. And we've come up with a program that to this date has delivered about 5,000 meals to vulnerable older adults who are shut in their homes right now. So without Care Connections Network as that intermediary, that would not have happened. So it does really enable our congregation to, fulfill their mission and also to get more visibility. The goal in all of this also, we don't, as I said, we don't proselytize, but people see what we're doing and people see where our hearts are, and it makes people want to come here and come to this congregation. So that has very much happened. And we're getting, especially right now, a lot of interest from the community, seeing what Lutheran Church of the Resurrection is doing through us and in partnership with us. So I think when things go back to a little bit of normal, we are going to see some new faces in the pews. And again, that is ultimately what we hope for. We also, I had a congregation from Palm Springs. So Palm Springs, California, if you don't know, is a desert community. There's a lot of older adults there. The percentage of population that is older there is much, much, much larger than younger. Well, one of the congregations came out to meet with me, and he was saying that, You know, they realize everybody's going after that same demographic in the community, that those young families. All these churches are trying to get the few of them that there are, and they weren't being very successful. But they looked around and they thought, well, older adults are absolutely a source of potential, you know, members for our congregation. Why don't we serve them? So they were looking at using this model and partnering with some other congregations in that area, Lutheran congregations, to do that. So it, you know, it is a different way, again, a different way to look at the situation, a different lens to look through. How can we serve the people that are in our communities? Okay, so as far as how we did this, you know, we definitely did congregational surveys. What was the need? What did people want? Because probably the worst thing you can do is just do what you think people want, because that generally doesn't work. And we found that a lot in our programming. I have to say, we put on events that we thought people would want and no one came. Then we realized, well, we need to dial that one back. That's not going to work. Obviously, you have to develop support in the congregation. You need to identify leadership. We formed a development committee of congregation members that included like a social worker, a nurse, some people that had business experience, some, you know, volunteers, you know, as much diversity as we could get in that. It really helped us. And we had to go out and find money. You do need money to get started, but there is money out there. You know, you just sometimes have to be creative. You also have to determine what services you're going to offer based off of those surveys that you're doing and things like that. We did develop a working board of directors that came from that original development committee, and they do work. All of my board members have an assigned role, whether they're in charge of educational events, social events, you know, reporting to our community partners, whatever the task is, everybody has to contribute and do something. And again, also developing those community partnerships. Community partners are essential to making a village work. So getting out there, going to meetings, going to networking luncheons and things like that is just kind of how you get it started. Okay, so bumps along the road. We definitely had some, and a lot of it came around the fact that we were using this community model in a faith community. So the fact that we used the term members and that we had membership dues caused a lot of initial pushback. And the way that we overcame that was we did, in a lot of ways, we recognize we're similar to a youth group. So what we're asking our members to do in our membership fees is just pay in advance for that year of the services that they're going to get. And our members understand that. Our members understand that they're supporting us. And we also are open to everyone. The traditional village model, you have to be a member to participate in the activities. We don't do that. We are completely open to anyone in the congregation or the community. What ends up happening when people continue to come to events is they join. And part of that, I think, is a little bit of member shaming. I do recognize, I'll hear my members saying, why haven't you joined yet? You know, so that definitely goes on. But they do eventually see the value and they end up joining. And we do offer those scholarships to anyone. And I don't ask them how much money they have or why they need help. I just offer it right up. And we do get some of our community partners to fund those. Some of our donors fund those. So we've never had an issue offering a scholarship or not having the funding to do that. Governance and the whole nonprofit status, that was a challenge. And I think it was just a function of the current church council when we were doing this, because I don't hear any of this anymore. But there was a concern that if we were a separate nonprofit, we might somehow like go rogue and do something crazy. But my current board, I only have one board member that is not a member of Lutheran Church of the Resurrection, and she's a nurse. So that's why it's important for me to have her on my board. But you know, the church is heavily represented in our leadership. Also, we had, at that time, it was called Building Capacity for Sustainable Ministries. And I know the ELCA still does it. It's a series of weekend workshops that help social ministries really professionalize what they're doing and learn how to do things like grant writing and asset mapping and, you know, all the things that you really should be doing to be a successful nonprofit. And they walk you through the process of how to become a 501c3. And that really is the model that they're presenting and that they want you to follow. And part of that is it does remove liability from the congregation. We're a separate 501c3, we're a separate company, we're incorporated under that. So if there's some issue or problem, it's us they're coming after. So I think once some time passed and we kept answering questions, being very open with our financial documents and our financial reporting, and I still report every month with financials and in a written report. Even though I'm the church council president, I still report to the council in that way. So they know exactly what we're doing, and they know if they have any questions, they can ask me at any time. So just being very transparent, not taking it personally, which I know was hard for some of my board members, but you know, just keep showing up and doing good work and people eventually accept it. And then we had a lot of conversations. Are you a social ministry organization or are you a community organization? I think that was just confusion over what the ELCA determines as a social ministry organization. And we very much are a social ministry of Lutheran Church of the Resurrection, even though we are a separate nonprofit and we are able to serve in the community. So that, again, that has been accepted at this point in time. And then we recognize that we really had to be flexible. When we started as a village, we started on this more concierge service model. And that created quite a bit of pushback, sort of that, I'm not ready for that. I don't need that. I'm not old. Like, why do I need that? So, and what we found was the members we had weren't asking for the services. They really didn't need the things we thought they would need. What they really wanted and what they really craved was all that social component that I've spent so much time talking about. And we realized that moving more to that social model and that intentional community building model was what served us better. And it kind of takes away that objection of I'm not ready, because they say that to me. I'm like, what? You're not ready to come to the party? You're not ready to go to the museum? You're not ready to make new friends and to get to know people better? What are you not ready for? You know, so it definitely gives me a response to that objection. Okay, so I've pretty much come to the end of all of my talking, but I do want to say that at CCN, we really do believe that a better experience of aging is possible. And I believe that tagline of aging better. I was part of the group that developed that, and I love it because we've all got to do it. I think I said that already. We all are in this journey together at whatever stage of it we're at, but how can we make it as good as possible? How can we make it an experience that is empowering to us, that actually is befitting of the lives that we've lived? And I think that providing this enables us to do that. And so I am proud to do this work. I'm excited about this model. And again, as I said, if any of you ever have any questions, whether it's now or down the road, you know, please shoot me an email or call me, and I'm happy to help you in any way that I can. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and maybe we can take some questions.
We do have a number of questions. So
okay.
I will start. Walter has put in there, our congregation is becoming more involved in ministry for and with the aging. A concern expressed within the congregation is we're not doing anything for youth and young adults. Like yourself, are other young adults and youth finding opportunities for service in this venture?
Yes, we do, and I should have mentioned that. We do have at this congregation, we do have a lot of opportunities for our youth. But the way that we really want to partner with the youth. So for example, we have a preschool on our campus, and we have a program where our members go and read stories to the preschoolers twice a week. So that way we are getting that it's an opportunity for our members to serve because that's big for a lot of our members. They want to still contribute. So that's one way that they do that. We put on events with the youth group, the older youth. We do like a big fall festival here, and we all work together to do that. The youth also, we encourage them to help with technology issues for our members. So we're giving, again, the youth a way to serve. Also, right now with this current program that I mentioned that we're doing with the city of Huntington Beach, part of that program is we have our young adults in the church, and this has been amazing because that young adult group is a lot harder to engage. You know, they graduate from high school and you don't see them again. Well, we have this event where my son's home from Washington, D.C. I don't know when he's going to come back, or go back there. So he's home and bored. So we have these young adults now that we are using to deliver this food they take delivery of it when it's, delivered to the church. They organize it, they distribute it, they're making phone calls. We're able to engage them in this community work that again happens because of our community partnerships. So hopefully that answers your question.
Good, thank you. Wayne has asked, regarding volunteers, does CCN provide any insurance or liability coverage in any special way?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we have a separate insurance policy from the congregation. From 2012 till 2015, we operated with Lutheran Church of the Resurrection basically being our fiscal sponsor. So when we incorporated separately, we had to get our own insurance, and it's through the Nonprofit Insurance Alliance. So we do have liability insurance for our volunteers. If volunteers are going to be having direct contact with the members, they're background checked. We check their motor vehicle records. They have to have minimum insurance limits on their auto policy. Thank you, Carol. I used to be an auto underwriter, so I should know that. But yeah, so yes, so we have insurance, we background check, we make sure they have their own insurance. So yeah, all of those things are done. And we have liability releases for members and volunteers and confidentiality agreements that they have to sign, and volunteer training.
Good, thank you. Sue Ann has asked, how many hours a week is your part-time position?
Well, what do I get paid for, or what do I work? I typically bill 20 hours a week, but I do work more than 20 hours a week, but I love it, so it's okay.
It's a ministry.
It's what?
It's a ministry.
Yes, it is. And I have to say, I left this out, but doing all this work has really inspired me. I went back to school to get my master's in social work. And so I'm so thrilled with that. And I never would have got there without this job. So I am very grateful to have it and to be able to serve this way. And it really doesn't bother me if it's over 20 hours a week.
Good. All right, Ruth is asking, not understanding the need for funding to form a village. Is it possible to do it gratis? And what are the expenses?
Absolutely, yes. And some villages they're all volunteer. It just changes what you can offer. So you do have expenses. If you're a separate nonprofit, I just said you have to have your own insurance, for example. If you have someone like me, you have to pay me. You could use church staff. Like church staff could do the job that I do. Because I do everything. I do bookkeeping. I do things, like this. I represent them at conferences. I do the membership management. I mean, it's kind of a lot of different things that could be spread out amongst other people. It could also be done by volunteers. What our group found with that was it was really hard to get forward momentum. Everybody was getting tired. There was no one really pushing it forward and moving it forward. So I am the biggest expense. So if you didn't have a person like me, your expenses would not be as high, but you probably won't accomplish as much because you do get volunteer burnout. I mean, that happens in church, it happens in nonprofits. Let me see, other expenses. It depends. Like, for example, we have those 4 parties a year, big parties with catering and entertainment. You know, those things like that cost money. We have buses that we pay for. I think of our bigger expenses. We subsidize a lot of the things that we do. So if they're going to a play that's maybe a little more expensive, you know, CCN pays for part of their tickets. Things like that.
Good, and that kind of relates to the next question, which is from Sue Ann, who asked, as you were describing CCN, that it sounds very much like the health ministry and senior ministry in her congregation, directed by a faith community nurse.
Okay.
So she was looking for the distinction between what you do and that kind of ministry. So I think you probably have answered a lot of that with your last, with your last answer. And I hope that has, you know, answered things for you, Sue Ann.
Yeah, and type it in if you need more clarity.
Okay. Yes, good point. Lois has asked, how long ago did this begin? And she also asked, will you share your slides? And yes, we will have a PDF of the slides that will be posted on our website.
Yeah, and we started development in 2010 and we launched in 2012, and we're still going strong in 2020. So, but it did take a couple of years to develop it.
And one of the things that the Village to Village Network does, because we experienced this on the behalf of the Aloha Project for Live Up, is that Village to Village Network has wonderful resources for the development. They have a whole development manual that kind of takes you step by step through a lot of the things that you might not have thought about.
Yes, and I would absolutely recommend that anyone who's thinking of joining a village, and they've even changed their fee structure. When we started, you had to just join. Now they have a development, like village and development fee. You know, they have, so they cut you a little bit of a deal when you're in development.
Wayne has asked, what aspects are part of adult daycare for caregiver relief? Do you offer any of that?
We do not do that. We have community partners that do. So we refer people to other organizations for that. What we do for caregivers is more things like we'll have seminars or education on caregiving, but we don't offer daycare. That's not part of our services.
And one of the challenges with with insuring an organization like this is once you get into any kind of medical or caregiving situation, you have to, you know, the requirements are totally different than if you're just a helping hand or offering the social and educational aspects. Ruth is asking, is there a senior activities center nearby that also does some of the things that you're doing?
Yes, and so we, our city has a beautiful facility, brand new, huge senior center. The hospital that we partner with has funded it, so it's definitely top of the line. The difference is, and what I'm always trying to communicate with the senior center, we've actually been working with them a little bit on this project where we're feeding people in the community, is that they very much are providing services. They're heavy on providing rides. They have social workers, you know, they're doing a lot of services, and that's not our goal. My goal really and truly is to form community. And when you go to that senior center, it's huge, especially when you first start going. It's intimidating for a lot of my members, and they don't mind going there with some friends to maybe go to a class, but they don't feel like that's their place. That's not their, I hate to call it a club, but in a way we kind of are. You know, we're this community of people that know each other really well at this point and are welcoming to newcomers. I think because of that faith component. But coming to us is kind of like being with your family, and going to the senior center is kind of like going to school. So, I mean, that's where it's different. My goal is different. I'm not trying to, I'm using all these tools and all these things that we do to build community amongst a certain group of people. So that's where we complement each other. We don't compete with each other.
Good, thank you. And finally, Kent has asked if a recording of this will be available to watch later. And yes, it will be, Kent. It will be posted on our website. And also I will send out an email to all of you, letting you know when those materials are posted on our website and you can access it there. So that'll be within the next few days. And we do have another question from Lois. In discussing development, was it baby steps to find needs within the church, then move to the larger mission?
Yeah, we definitely, at the beginning, we did surveys because they'd gone to the Village to Village conference. And if you go to one of those conferences, you get all this information and you meet, there's hundreds of people there, you know, from villages all across the country, and you hear how they're doing things. And there's so many different ways to do it. So when they came back and decided, hey, we can adapt this model, the first thing they did was do surveys. And, you know, what are your needs? What needs aren't being met? Not just within the congregation, but in the community. Like, what sort of services do you wish you had access to? Or, you know, and so they started with that. And I think they really focused, at that time, the traditional village model was that, like I said, that service-oriented model. So they were, I think, afraid to leave that too far. But we realized very quickly, once we actually launched, that that really wasn't a good model for us. And I think a lot of villages have realized that. I can say from my work at Village Movement California, we really, in the 2 years that I worked on that project, we recognized very quickly that this social model was really what was probably the future for villages. Even villages that do offer a lot of services and whose participants take advantage of them, it's still that social component that is sort of the heart of it and at the core of it. So I think if you start with that, and you're safest. But we definitely did in development, and also in development, not only determining what your potential members want, but what's in the community around you. Like, it's so important to make those partnerships at that stage. We couldn't do our educational seminars, which are, they're a sort of a easy thing for me to write grants for, you know, to fund things like that. So when I'm looking at projects that we're putting on, you know, if I can wrap funding around them, it helps. So, but how do I do that? How do I do that inexpensively without community partners? I can't. So making those partnerships, like our senior center does a senior networking luncheon once every other month, and people like me go to it, and a lot of different service providers are there. But you can network and you can meet people and you can meet representatives from different organizations. They have speakers, so, you know, I can connect with the Council on Aging there, or those sorts of things, and, you know, tell them what you're doing, because they want to help you. It's their mission to, you know, get their information out there, and you're a potential source of a lot of people for them to do that with. So it's, you know, during that development time, that's when you want to be doing all those things.
Good. And Reverend Jean has asked about the size of your congregation. She says you speak of campus, so that it sounds pretty big.
Well, maybe I'm being, well, we do have, I think we're a traditional Lutheran church. We have a sanctuary, we have a preschool, and then we have a big meeting hall and another smaller building with offices and a library.
How large is your?
I'm trying to think of, this is awful because I'm the church council president. Oh my goodness. I want to say we probably, I don't know, we probably have 300 people that we regularly have a lot of contact with. We probably have more like 500 that we, you know, those people you never see. But you'd have to look it up on the ELCA website. That's terrible. I should have known that. But I'd say our average attendance every week, like when we actually attend church, is probably, we probably have a couple of hundred people, you know, that come to our various services. We have 3 services, 1 Japanese, 2 English. So.
Well, good. Well, thank you for all of the questions. And thank you, Carolyn, for a wonderful presentation. I've had several thank yous, you know, expressed for your information. And obviously people are interested in and following up. So as I said, it will be posted on our website, and you will receive an email letting you know when that is available. And I will also put a link to the Village to Village Network on there. And if Carolyn is fine with this, I will put her email address, a link to her email address in case you want to contact her and ask her some specific questions. So
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, like I said, I'm really passionate about this. So if anyone wants to talk about it, yeah, feel free to reach out and contact me. And thank you for being here and listening, and for the great questions.
yes, and please join us again next month in June 18th. Our topic will be a roundtable discussion with 4 different individuals, some ELCA, some LCMS, and talking about senior ministry in their congregation. Carolyn will be one of those panelists. So there will be time for questions as well, but just describing how their senior ministry works in their congregation. So please join us then. And you can sign up for that on the Aloha website. So thank you all again for joining us, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.